They weren't just bikes, they were legends, machines that echoed through the streets, defined generations, and built memories that still ride in the hearts of men over 40. Before fuel injection, rider modes and traction control, these motorcycles delivered raw power, real sound and unforgettable stories. In this video, we're counting down 12 iconic bikes that raised a generation, machines that didn't just get you from point A to point B, they made you feel alive. If you've ever twisted the throttle on one of these beasts, you'll know exactly what we mean. Let's ride back in time. Bike number 12. Honda CB750, 1969 to 1978. You've probably heard the Honda CB750 called the first superbike, and it's no exaggeration. Released in the year 1969, this machine wasn't just fast, it was revolutionary. At a time when motorcycles were either unreliable or overpriced, Honda delivered a bike with power, refinement, and durability, all at a price that undercut its competitors. The CB750 came with a 736cc air-cooled inline-4 engine, producing around 67 horsepower, pushing the bike to over 120 miles per hour, unheard of for a production model at the time. But speed wasn't the only thing that set it apart. It was the first mass-market bike with a front disc brake, and it had electric start, a 5-speed transmission, and an engine so smooth it earned the nickname the Gentleman's Racer. For just $1,495 in the US, riders were getting tech and performance that blew past anything Harley, Norton, or Triumph had on offer. What no one tells you is how much the CB750 changed motorcycling culture itself. It wasn't just a machine, it was a message. Honda proved that high performance didn't have to mean high maintenance. The CB750 could start every morning, ride cross-country and still destroy the local competition on weekends. This wasn't a bike for collectors, it was for real riders. And it raised a generation on reliability and raw speed. Even today, it's one of the best vintage bikes to own if you want something dependable and iconic. Just keep an eye on aging cam chain tensioners and wiring if you're restoring one. Otherwise, the CB750 is proof that smart engineering never goes out of style. But if you thought this Honda was a game changer, wait till you see what Yamaha did with bike number 11. Bike number 11. Yamaha RD 350, 1973 to 1975. If the Honda CB750 was the gentleman's superbike, the Yamaha RD 350 was its wild, rebellious younger cousin. Launched in the year 1973, the RD 350 featured a 347cc air-cooled two-stroke parallel twin engine producing around 39 horsepower. That might not sound like much on paper, until you feel the punch. Weighing just 350 pounds, this bike had a brutal power-to-weight ratio, and could reach 0 to 60 miles per hour in under 6 seconds. That was sport bike performance, in a package no bigger than a commuter. But the RD 350 wasn't just fast, it was raw. It had no electronic safety nets, no traction control, and it didn't pretend to be friendly. When that power band hit around 6,000 RPM, the front wheel wanted to lift. It was the kind of thrill that taught a generation how to really ride, and sometimes how to crash. That's why it earned nicknames like the Giant Killer and the Pocket Rocket. What no one tells you is how affordable performance used to be. The RD 350 gave riders sport bike level speed at a price far lower than 4-stroke competitors. And because it was a 2-stroke, it was easy to wrench on, modify and race. Young riders loved it, but insurance companies hated it, for good reason. Even today, the RD 350 is respected in vintage circles for what it was, a pure performance machine with attitude. But if you're thinking of getting one now, be warned, original parts are getting rare, and finding a clean engine that hasn't been abused takes effort. Bike number 10. Suzuki GT750, 1971 to 1977. Nicknamed the Water Buffalo in the US, and Kettle in the UK, the Suzuki GT750 was a beast, unlike anything riders had seen before. Released in the year 1971, it was the world's first mass-produced liquid-cooled 3-cylinder 2-stroke motorcycle. And yes, it was massive. With a 738cc engine pumping out around 67 horsepower, and weighing nearly 550 pounds, the GT750 wasn't about razor-sharp handling. It was about smooth power, bold design, and long-distance performance that most two-strokes could only dream of. What made the GT750 special wasn't just the engine, it was the engineering. Suzuki used liquid cooling to solve the overheating issues that plagued large two-strokes. The bike was incredibly smooth and had surprisingly good touring capabilities, including dual front disc brakes, a rarity at the time, wide handlebars, and a comfortable seat. Riders could cruise for hours without numb hands or back pain, something unheard of in most high-performance bikes of that era. But here's what most people miss. The GT750 was Suzuki's answer to the rising threat from four-stroke giants like the CB750. It wasn't as fast in a straight line, but it was more refined than any two-stroke before it, and for a while it gave Suzuki a serious edge in the performance touring market. Riders over 40 today remember it not for corner carving, but for that deep growling exhaust note and unstoppable torque on the highway. If you're considering picking one up today, know this: parts are still available, but prices are climbing fast. And because of its size, it's better suited for straight road cruising than tight city riding. Still, it remains one of the boldest machines Suzuki ever built. At 10th, think this was heavy. Wait till you meet the iron legend that still runs through India's veins. Bike number 9 is coming next. Bike number 9. Royal Enfield Bullet 350, 1948 to present. The Royal Enfield Bullet 350 isn't just a motorcycle. It's the world's longest-running production bike. First launched in the year 1948, and still rolling off assembly lines today, the Bullet became a symbol of raw endurance, timeless design, and thumping torque. With a 346cc air-cooled single-cylinder engine producing around 19 horsepower, it was never built to be fast. It was built to survive. What made the Bullet legendary wasn't speed or innovation, it was toughness. From mountain roads to desert tracks, this bike kept going. It had a 4-speed gearbox in its early versions and later moved to a 5-speed layout. But beyond specs, it was the mechanical simplicity that earned it a cult following. Anyone with basic tools and a little patience could keep one running for decades. In India, it was used by police forces, the military, and cross-country travelers who needed a machine they could trust. Here's what no one tells you. The original cast-iron engine Bullets were never about comfort. They were heavy, rough, and sometimes leaked oil, but they had character. That signature exhaust note, known as the thump, echoed through entire towns. For many riders over 40, the Bullet wasn't just their first bike, it was their first taste of freedom. Modern versions with the unit construction engine brought more reliability, electric start, and cleaner emissions, but some say they lost a bit of soul. Still, whether you ride a vintage model or a newer one, the Bullet 350 holds a legacy few bikes can match. If you find an old-school cast-iron Bullet today, expect some work, but also expect a riding experience that's slow, heavy, and deeply satisfying. But if you thought the Bullet was soulful, wait until you see the British beauty that ruled both the cafe and the countryside. Bike number 8. Triumph Bonneville T120, 1959 to 1975. The Triumph Bonneville T120 wasn't just a motorcycle. It was Britain's answer to speed, style, and street dominance. Launched in the year 1959, the T120 featured a 649cc parallel twin engine that produced around 46 horsepower and could hit speeds of over 110 miles per hour, a serious number back then. Named after the Bonneville salt flats where Triumph set land speed records, this bike wasn't shy about its performance roots. But the T120 wasn't all about numbers. What made it iconic was its balance: raw torque, classic looks, and a mechanical simplicity that made it a favorite of cafe racers, outlaws, and long-distance riders alike. It had a 4-speed gearbox, twin ML carburetors, and that unmistakable twin-pipe growl that still echoes in vintage shows today. What most people don't know is how much influence the Bonneville had globally. While American brands were pushing heavy cruisers and Japanese companies were still gearing up for world domination, the T120 carved a niche for light, fast, and beautifully balanced machines. In the 1960s, it was the bike everyone wanted. Even Hollywood stars like Steve McQueen rode one. For many, the Bonnie was freedom on 2 wheels, wrapped in chrome and attitude. Of course, it wasn't perfect. Older Bonnevilles had infamous electrical gremlins, oil leaks, and a tendency to vibrate themselves loose. But they were easy to fix, endlessly modifiable, and built with real steel and soul. For many riders over 40, this was the bike that defined cool. The one they stared at in the dealership window, hoping one day to ride. If you're lucky enough to find a well-maintained unit today, the T120 is a true collectible. It's not just a ride, it's a return ticket to an era when motorcycles were simpler, louder, and full of heart. But if you thought this British icon had character, wait until you hear about the German machine that mixed engineering with attitude. Bike number 7. BMW R90S, 1973 to 1976. The BMW R90S wasn't your typical 1970s motorcycle. It was Germany's loud and clear declaration that performance didn't have to mean chaos. Introduced in the year 1973, the R90S was an 898cc air-cooled flat twin, also known as a boxer-powered machine, that made around 67 horsepower and topped out at 124 miles per hour. But the numbers didn't tell the whole story. This was a bike built with surgical precision, designed to cruise at high speeds for hours, not just blast off the line. What truly set the R90S apart was its refinement. It came with a 5-speed gearbox, dual-disc brakes up front, and an iconic wind tunnel-tested fairing, a first for BMW on a production sport bike. The finish? Immaculate. Even the signature paint job, smoke gray or Daytona orange, was hand-applied. BMW wasn't trying to make a wild two-wheeled beast. They were building the Porsche of motorcycles. Here's what no one tells you. The R90S was a gamble. BMW was known for conservative touring bikes. The R90S changed that image overnight, thanks in part to a win at the very first AMA Superbike race in the year 1976. It wasn't just a luxury bike anymore. It had race-bred credibility. Riders over 40 today remember it not just as a high-end machine, but as the moment BMW joined the performance conversation. But it wasn't for everyone. It was expensive, it demanded proper maintenance, and the boxer engine's layout felt odd to riders used to inline motors. Yet those who got used to it swore by the balance, the torque, and the unmatched long-distance comfort. Today, the R90S is a vintage icon, reliable, collectible, and still capable of eating miles like it did 50 years ago. It's a bike that whispered class, but roared when needed. A toy. But if you think German engineering made things too civilized, the next bike brought back grit, roar, and British rebellion. Get ready for bike number 6. Bike number 6. Norton Commando 750, 1967 to 1977. The Norton Commando 750 was Britain's last big swing before the Japanese wave crashed in. Launched in the year 1967, this 745cc air-cooled parallel twin was loud, raw, and fast, everything a true rider craved, producing around 58 horsepower and capable of 115 miles per hour. It wasn't just built for speed, it was built for presence. This was a bike that shook, roared, and made your heart race before you even let out the clutch. What really set the Commando apart was its isoelastic frame system. Norton engineers knew the engine vibrated like crazy, so instead of redesigning the power plant, they suspended it in rubber mountings to reduce the vibration felt by the rider. It was an odd solution, but it worked, making the Commando more comfortable than other big British twins of the time. What no one tells you is how much the Commando dominated in its early years. It won Machine of the Year from Motorcycle News 5 years in a row. From 1968 to 1972, it had cafe racer swagger with touring comfort, a combination few bikes managed back then. It became the poster bike of British cool long after Triumphs started showing their age. But the Commando wasn't perfect. Oil leaks were common, and its Lucas electrics earned a reputation for leaving riders stranded. Still, it had that unfiltered mechanical feel, the kind that modern bikes can't replicate. For many riders over 40, the Commando wasn't just a bike, it was a moment. A golden era before fuel injection, plastic fairings, and overcomplication. If you're lucky enough to find a working one today, expect maintenance, but also a riding experience that feels alive. Not smooth, not easy, but real. You've heard the British Thunder. Now let's take a detour east, where a humble two-stroke became a legend of its own. Bike number 5. Jawa 250, Type 353 and 354, 1954 to 1974. The Jawa 250 wasn't built to be flashy. It was built to last. Manufactured in Czechoslovakia and later produced under license in countries like India and Pakistan. The Type 353 and Type 354 were some of the most rugged, reliable two-strokes ever made. With a 248cc air-cooled single-cylinder engine producing around 12 to 14 horsepower, this bike wasn't going to win any drag races. But what it lacked in speed, it made up for in soul, and a shocking level of durability. This bike earned its reputation in the real world. Dusty roads, flooded fields, and cold starts in harsh winters. It had a 4-speed gearbox, a distinctive torpedo-style fuel tank and an exhaust note that became instantly recognizable to anyone who grew up around it. While most Western riders associate Jawa with old-school charm, in South Asia and Eastern Europe, it was a lifeline. Cheap to run, simple to fix, and nearly impossible to kill. What no one tells you is how much engineering went into this seemingly simple bike. The enclosed chain, protected electrics, and sealed engine made it resistant to mud, water, and abuse, things modern entry-level bikes still struggle with. Riders over 40 remember it not as a performance machine, but as the bike that just wouldn't stop. It was used for everything: commuting, carrying cargo, even cross-country trips with barely any maintenance. If you're thinking about owning one today, parts can be tricky to source unless you're near a Jawa-friendly country, but many communities still keep the legacy alive with rebuilds, restorations, and modified customs, and while it may not look aggressive, it commands respect. Hun from Eastern grit to Italian flair, the next bike didn't roar, it buzzed, but it changed the world in a very different way. Bike number 4. Vespa PX150, 1977 to 2017. The Vespa PX150 didn't need horsepower to make history, it just needed character. Launched in the year 1977 by the iconic Italian brand Piaggio, this 150cc two-stroke scooter became a cultural phenomenon across Europe, Asia, and beyond. With just 8 to 10 horsepower and a top speed of around 60 miles per hour, the PX150 wasn't built to thrill. It was built to move people, cheaply, stylishly, and reliably. But make no mistake, the Vespa PX wasn't just a scooter. It was freedom on two wheels for millions. Its manual 4-speed gearbox, unusual for scooters, its distinctive sheet metal body, and monocoque frame made it strong and simple. The small 10-inch wheels made tight turns effortless, and the engine was so easy to work on that many owners fixed theirs right on the roadside with basic tools. What no one tells you is how much this machine impacted working-class families. In post-war Europe or growing economies like India and Pakistan, the PX150 was often the first and only vehicle a family owned. You could ride it to work, pick up groceries, and take your kids to school, all on a single tank. Its iconic shape, gentle buzz, and unmatched practicality earned it a place in garages for decades. Despite its humble specs, it became a symbol of youth, rebellion, and even romance, seen in films, protests, and music videos alike. For those over 40, the Vespa PX150 represents simpler times, where the joy of riding didn't require speed, just wind in your face and no traffic jams. Today, the PX150 remains a collectible icon. While newer scooters are more refined, none carry the same soul. Owning one is like riding a time machine, stylish, stubborn, and proudly analog. Otto, from buzzing scooters to booming gold stars, the next bike roared through racing history with unmatched heritage. Bike number 3. BSA Gold Star DBD34, 1956 to 1963. The BSA Gold Star DBD34 wasn't just a motorcycle, it was a racing weapon with license plates. Born in Britain during the golden age of cafe racers, this 500cc single-cylinder machine was one of the fastest and most desirable production bikes of its time, producing around 40 horsepower, and capable of over 110 miles per hour. The DBD34 set new standards for what a factory-built motorcycle could do on the road and the track. Hand-built with precision, the Gold Star featured an all-alloy engine, a 4-speed close-ratio gearbox, and a big Amal GP carburetor that required a very specific starting ritual. It wasn't user-friendly, it was pure performance. Riders had to know how to tickle the carb, find top dead center, and kick it with intent, but those who mastered it were rewarded with an engine note so sharp it could be mistaken for a race bike because it was one. What no one tells you is how dominant the Gold Star was in club racing, hill climbs, and the legendary Isle of Man TT. Riders over 40 still remember it as the benchmark for single-cylinder performance before twins and triples took over. It wasn't a bike you bought for commuting. It was something you earned, learned, and respected. Every ride was a test of skill and tuning. Owning one today is a commitment. They're collectible, expensive, and not for casual use. But that's the point. The DBD34 Gold Star is a symbol of British craftsmanship at its peak. A bike that asked a lot from the rider and gave back even more in character and raw speed. And now, from cafe racers to cruiser royalty, the final bike on this list brought American muscle, outlaw culture, and street attitude like no other. Bike number 2. Harley-Davidson FXR, 1982 to 1994. The Harley-Davidson FXR wasn't the loudest, flashiest, or most expensive Harley, but insiders know it was one of the best. Released in the year 1982, the FXR featured a rubber-mounted 1340cc Evolution V-twin engine and a newly engineered frame that prioritized handling, rigidity, and performance, three things not usually associated with Harley-Davidson at the time. What made the FXR different was how it rode. Built during a time when Harley was fighting to reclaim its reputation, the FXR was developed by a group of engineers, not marketing guys, and it showed. It had a triangulated steel frame, refined suspension, and a balanced chassis that handled twisty roads far better than most Harleys before or since. In short, it was the rider's Harley, not the poser's. But here's what no one tells you. The FXR didn't sell well at first. It was too good, too different from what traditional Harley buyers expected. It lacked the bulk and chrome many customers associated with the brand. Ironically, that's what made it great. Over time, it gained cult status with club riders, performance builders, and those who actually cared about how a Harley cornered. Ask riders over 40 who've ridden an FXR and they'll tell you, it's one of the most stable, responsive, and best-balanced Harley platforms ever made. It became the foundation for stunt bikes, club bikes, and touring rigs that could do 1,000 miles in a weekend without falling apart. Today, clean FXRs are in high demand, not just for nostalgia but because modern Harleys still struggle to match their ride quality. If you want American muscle with brains behind the brawn, the FXR is your bike. And now for the one that started it all, the machine that broke speed barriers and created an entirely new category. Bike number 1 is the undisputed king of legends. Bike number 1. Kawasaki Z1 900. 1972 to 1976. The Kawasaki Z1 900 didn't just raise the bar, it rebuilt the whole game. Launched in the year 1972, it was Kawasaki's bold response to Honda's CB750. But instead of playing catch-up, they blew the competition out of the water. The Z1 featured a 903cc DOHC inline-4 engine, producing 82 horsepower, capable of hitting over 130 miles per hour, making it the fastest production motorcycle in the world at launch. What made it legendary wasn't just the power, but how it delivered it. The Z1's engine was smooth, durable, and tuned for both top-end speed and usable torque. It had a 5-speed gearbox, electric start, dual overhead cams, a first in its class, and a sound that gave riders chills. Unlike many performance bikes of the era, it was also dependable. You could thrash it all day, and ride it home without fear. Here's what most people don't realize. The Z1 wasn't just a faster CB750, it was a statement of dominance. Kawasaki had held back releasing their big 4-cylinder until they could beat Honda at its own game, and they did. It won awards, races, and hearts across the globe. In drag racing, it became a legend. On the street, it was the bike to own. And in garages everywhere, it sparked a new era of Japanese motorcycle superiority. Riders over 40 often call the Z1 the Holy Grail, a machine that combined brute speed, bulletproof engineering, and serious curb appeal. Its design still holds up today, and for collectors, an original Z1 in good condition is gold. Just expect to pay a premium. These bikes are not cheap, and for good reason. This wasn't just a bike that raised a generation, it was the bike that changed everything.